Welcome to the Landlord Diaries, where we talk about midterm rentals and the opportunities behind them. We'll share landlord stories, talk about maximizing investment potential, and discuss how to live the very best landlord life. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Furnished Finder, the leader and largest online marketplace for midterm rentals. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy our content.
Hey, it's Kelly Bailey, your host of the Landlord Diaries. I'm here with my fabulous co-host, Miss Katie Lyon. We come to you from the Furnished Finder marketing team and midterm rental hosts ourselves. And guess what? We get to talk with Rachel Gainsbrugh today. And I love the fact that she refers to herself as a mathlete. She is just all about the numbers. Katie, what did you really gain from Rachel today?
Rachel is like one of my favorite people in the midterm rental world. So when we got the opportunity to have her back on so we could continue the discussion that we started in our first part, I was all for it. She's so knowledgeable and mathlete, like you hit the nail on the head. She's all about math and strategy, and she's just like, and she's also here to share it all. So not only does she remind me of, the letter jackets in Mean Girls where they got mathlete on the back, but she's just like one of my favorite people, and she's just so incredibly sharp. So I'm super excited about this episode.
Dr. Rachel Gainsbrugh is known as the luxury short-term rental doctor, and her luxury brand is Short-Term Gems. Rachel was a speaker at the 2023 Midterm Rentals Summit and is an expert in the luxury short-term midterm rental space. Rachel has a heart for training busy professionals in how to overcome burnout and change their trajectory with what she calls the two-door strategy. One luxury short-term rental plus one high value midterm rental to maximize your return on investment and your return on energy. Don't we all need more energy? Dr. Rachel, how are you today?
Hello. Thank you for having me. I am doing well. I love what you just said. Yes, return on energy, return on enjoyment. I call it my
Uh-huh.
ROE.
Yes. Well, just if you're tuning in now, this is part 2 of the episode, and part 1 covered what the two-door strategy is, how to be successful there. A lot of different topics that you don't want to miss. So go back to part 1 if you haven't caught that yet. And now we'll jump into some more meaty conversations about midterm rentals. And why don't we start off with Rachel? Nobody likes vacancies. And you say that's a common question you get is, Rachel, how do you stay fully booked? But you also say that's the wrong question. The right question is, what's my biggest ROI or return on investment or revenue? So you have, I think, certain goals for your short term rentals, your midterm rentals. Give us the scoop.
Absolutely. So, if we're talking short term rentals, since we have larger properties, it takes a little bit more work to get that product back to the A plus condition that it needs to be in to garner that those raving fans, get those 5-star reviews. And so you need a little bit, I call it breathing room for those particular properties. When we started off, we had drank the Kool-Aid of 100% occupancy, 90% occupancy for short-term rentals. And what we were finding was that at the end of the year, those properties where we drove the occupancy rate, rather whether it was dropping the price down just to get someone in the property, we incurred more costs due to damage. We incurred less time in between to make those much needed repairs, and just not enough time to give that property a little space to breathe so that we can get that product back up to tip top condition. So we tested it with another set of our properties where we kept it as 70% occupancy for short term rentals. And those properties at the end of the year ended up generating more revenue because there was enough time for the property to be the maintenance team to come in and do what they needed to do. There were far less customer complaints. We weren't giving out refunds like it was going out of business. Those refunds, guys, they could really break that budget at the end of the month. And so, comparing apples to apples, it turned out that if we kept our properties at a 65 to 70% occupancy rate instead of 80% or higher, we generated more revenue net at the end of the year. And for midterm rentals, it's a whole different story, and we can get into that.
Yeah, I think you're making some really good points that point you to why midterm rentals are such a valuable market because you only have on average four turnovers a year and sometimes just one or two. And so you don't have those extra costs coming in on the property like you do with short-term rentals. So, yes, what have you found is your sweet spot for midterm rentals and is it for the occupancy side?
Yeah, for the occupancy for midterm rentals, we can drive that puppy all the way up because, like you just said, there's only 3 to 4 turnovers per year that we're encountering. We do enlisted our cleaning team to go into the property once a month because we're not long term rentals after all, right? So, having someone come in there and provide a professional clean periodically, we like to go once a month, and they're also not just our cleaners, but they're, eyes and ears. They're doing a little spying, a little snooping to make sure that everything's copacetic, that there's no type of chemical labs or anything in those
Uh-huh.
properties. I come from healthcare, so this is something that's in my mind all the time. So for us, those occupancy rates are quite high. In the last 12 months or so, across 4 properties, we only had 6 or 7 days of vacancy. And that's because of these insurance policyholder guests who sadly require a place to stay, and they keep extending because of contractor issues or delay in supply chain and so on and so forth.
Okay, Rachel, I love what you said there about keeping eyes on your property. With midterm rentals, you're going to get those professional tenants, you're going to get medical professionals, you're going to get families, you're going to get, you're not going to get the typical short-term rental guests, but it's still always a good thing to keep an eye on your property. I actually had a set of tenants recently who wanted to extend, and as a thank you, I offered a cleaning in between. And for me, it's $125 cleaning, but it gets my cleaner in there really to see if anything needs to be repaired, because then I can know at the end of their stay, okay, hey, those blinds aren't looking so good, or these light fixtures aren't looking good. And I'll pencil in a few more days of vacancy because those vacancies can really be a tool, like you're saying. It's also really nice that you have the opportunity to screen your tenants on midterm rentals.
Yeah.
I know Kelly and I use KeyCheck, which is Furnished Finder's sister company, but that gives you a nice kind of, it can give you like a little bit of landlord Xanax when you're handing over the keys for 3 to 6 months,
Yeah.
and you're right. Like you're not in there, your cleaner's not in there every week. So, I love that. That's a great tip. And yeah, there's something to be said for if you have someone in there for a really long period of time, go ahead and offer a cleaning or charge for a cleaning, whatever you need, because you want to maintain your property the best possible. But yeah, these vacancies can be such a tool, especially when you're waiting for the right tenant. Kelly, I don't know about you, but I've had a couple of instances before where I was feeling really rushed, and I accepted a tenant that was a great tenant, but the property was like a little bit too big for them. Their budget was a little bit smaller than what I needed to hit my numbers. But I was anxious. I got him in there, and literally the next couple of days, I got flooded with requests of people who were a better fit. So it's like patience is huge in this world.
Yeah, for sure. Two things I want to add to that is we're talking about midterm rentals while it's such a better strategy than long-term rentals because you do get to touch your properties throughout the year more often if you want. It typically produces 1.5 to 2 times the profit of a long-term rental, but still is less headache than a short-term rental. And so the two tips I want to add is if you're looking for ways to get in your property during the stays, Changing the air filters is always a good one. And then I had someone share with me the other day, they just let the tenant know, hey, it's coming up for, a re-rent. You're moving out in a couple weeks. We need to just come in and check the property, see if there's anything we're going to need to do on the turnover. And I thought that was brilliant. Why not ask? And most guests are going to be perfectly fine with that, especially since midterm rental guests are professionals and courteous. And Katie said many times they even leave thoughtful gifts in the home. We just had someone say, hey, I my monitor died, so I got a new monitor. Do you want me just to leave it in the home when I depart? Like, if you'd like to, sure, go ahead. And they were even proactive and said, and I went ahead and reached out to, the recycling company, and they said there's four pickups a year. Is it okay if I go ahead and schedule one of those pickups? I didn't want to do it unless if you guys were going to use all four of those. I'm like, girl, I love your proactiveness. Get after it.
I love that.
Let's live here a minute and do a quick little round table because we all have different size properties. So, my 3 bedroom, 2 baths, I'd say our cleaners are typically there for about 5 to 6 hours. You have 5 to 8 bedroom homes, and you mentioned sometimes it might take a couple days. What's average for your cleaners for those larger homes? 1 day, or do they like to have 2 days?
Yeah, so if it's a short-term rental, they can potentially manage it in 1 day. However, it's a team of 2 or a team of 3, for those 5 plus bedrooms. So we have 5 plus 8 5 to 8 bedroom properties. So a team of 2, it'll take it's not gonna be an 11 a.m. checkout to 4 p.m. check-in. Most likely, it's not a same-day turn. If it's a midterm rental, most definitely, they need a whole day and a team of 2 or 3 to get that property back in shape.
Mhm.
We're changing out linen, so a lot of times it's like figuring out the
It's waiting for
configuration.
the laundry, right?
Yeah. Figure out the
Yes.
configuration, what stays and what goes as well, so they have to make some judgment calls on some linens that just aren't gonna make the next.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I've got studio to 3 bed now, and it takes them, I'd say, probably 3 hours on average, probably closer to 2 hours for the studios. It depends on the laundry. So, for a while, I ended up like, I felt like I was paying the cleaners to wait for the laundry. They were like, we're all done and we're waiting for the laundry. So I've started when my tenants are getting ready to check out, I just ask them, and like part of the checkout instructions, which I try to keep as simple as possible, is like, hey, if you have a chance to start the towels or the sheets, it's really helpful. If you don't, it's like no big deal. 9 times out of 10, they do. Sometimes they're even like, I did it and I made the bed. And I'm like, cool,
Mhm.
that's awesome. Thank you so much. But usually they don't mind helping because they're professionals and they're moving in, right? They're not staying there. They're moving in, right? So that has helped me a ton, is just asking for that little bit of help, because the laundry is like you end up just waiting for the washer and dryer. But there's a couple times where it's been a little rougher than normal and it's taken them longer. And at that point, my charger just charges me by the hour, which I think is
Mhm.
really fair.
Mhm.
But I also have stopped doing same day turns just because they're too stressful. Um, I like to give the cleaner like time, and I don't want them to feel rushed. And we just had someone move out earlier this week, and she was like, the place was amazing, but it didn't have blackout curtains. And this was our first midterm rental. And we got the cutest curtains and not the blackout curtains. So I'm like, okay, I want to have time to go in there and add the blackout curtains, right? So it like gives you a little bit of breathing room, which I appreciate.
We should tie this into checkout plans because we don't really talk about that. Like, so I'll go first with the checkout process that we've perfected for our stays over the last 3 years. We like to remind them of the checkout policy about a week prior to move out, and what we do, because what we're saying, laundry is such a large part of that, is I ask them to wash everything except what they used the night before. So we don't want it to be stressful for them last minute, the day of leaving. but they'll have time to plan ahead and kind of get everything washed that they're not using. And so then there's less to wash day of for the cleaners because they've already washed everything except what they slept on the night before. Rachel, what do you do for your midterm rentals?
Today's episode is proudly sponsored by Furnished Finder, the ultimate platform for hassle-free midterm rentals. Whether you're a seasoned landlord or just getting started, Furnished Finder has everything you need to find your next tenant. With Furnished Finder, you can say goodbye to booking fees, markups, and commissions, and hello to direct bookings. If you're ready to experience all the benefits renting your property for 30 days or more, head over to furnishedfinder.com where you can list your property for one low annual price. We make it easy to get started.
So we have, I would say, a deep bench of linens because we have so many properties and so many beds. And so for us, the cleaners, they would just strip everything from the beds, and we actually use a linen service that takes care of cleaning the linens. So that helps a lot. Again, 5 to 8 bedrooms, y'all.
Right.
Right.
They're going to be doing laundry for days
For
if you don't
days.
just take it out. Just get rid of it.
Just get rid of it. And so
Wash it elsewhere.
wash it elsewhere. And so our checkout process is typically very low key. If they want to run the dishwasher, they may. They don't necessarily have to, because again, the cleaners, they have a brand new, fresh batch of linens for the beds, for the owner's closet. They have nothing to do with laundry. If there's laundry in the washer or washer, yes, if there's laundry in the washer or the dryer, our white glove team goes in and picks that up, picks up the dirty linens, and brings it to a centralized location where the linen service then takes care of those linens. And yeah, so it's pretty low key for our guests. Our biggest concern is if there's some type of damage. So there's one of our properties where the kid, I was told from the family, was playing with a light switch that kind of messed up the electrical.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, right? And so, there was that. There was a coffee table that had, like, a leg that was kinda broken, and we had a spare coffee table. We didn't mind
Yeah.
that. We're like, "Okay, it happens." So the cost of doing business, but for the electrical, I think that turned out to be a six or $700 project, which wasn't the end of the world, but that had to come out of their deposit, and, they were
Yeah.
totally okay with it because we weren't nitpicky about all the other extra little things. There are little scuffs and things like that. It's lived in.
Sure.
The coffee table that was broken, they were kind of freaked out about that. I was like, no, that's okay. But the electrical, we're like, we're going to have to take care of that. And they were completely fine with that.
But that is nice with a midterm, right? Like you're taking a deposit, and you have some protection, versus when you're doing a short-term rental, you might have to go through the processes of Airbnb or their coverage or something like that. So I always feel like people are a little bit more committed when they have that like hard deposit too. It's like, okay, we're both in this, like everybody's got some skin in the game. So that's awesome. All right. So Rachel, let's talk about how like tips for setting up your midterm rentals. And I'm assuming that most of your properties, do you flex them so there's a short term and then you also use the same property as a midterm?
Yeah. Yeah, I sure do.
Okay.
Yeah, because there are so many reasons people travel, right? A
Right.
variety of reasons. It could be for work, it could be for visiting family. And so, for those that are looking for those 2 or 3 days stays in between our midterm stays, we're able to host those individuals coming to the same local area looking for the same
Mm-hmm.
type of property. And so we flex that. And that makes it really tricky with the calendar, right? And so just
Yeah.
being really keen on when the guest is going to be checking out and you're expecting vacancy, that's when we're on high alert as to, okay, is there opportunity to grab a couple of the short term rental bookings while we are waiting for that next midterm rental, the right next midterm rental guest?
Yeah, we've had some good discussions with hosts that do the hybrid kind of model lately, and it's interesting. Everybody has like a little bit of a spin of how they do the calendar management, and we've heard kind of strategy one, which is like you're like I am taking midterm bookings primarily, and then like you said, you're going to fill the gaps if you have them. Or for some reason, it's like a seasonal shift, right? Like If you're in a really seasonal area, they're like, we literally flip the switch in April or whatever it is, and we become short-term rental. There's some other people who are primarily short-term, and then they kind of wait and see, they're open to midterm, but they kind of take it as it comes. So it's interesting to hear kind of the way that you balance the two.
The one thing I want to add is Furnished Finder being a lead generation platform is it's really nice that the bookings aren't automatically coming in. It's you get to kind of look at, who all do I have that's interested at this time and go from there with a normal, make sure apply fair housing, all those kind of things. But you get to select who you think the best fit for the property is. But a reminder is don't forget to turn off the instant book during that time period if you have someone you're talking with that hasn't booked yet, just in case someone sneaks in for a weekend stay during that time. And then we've also heard a story on one of our other episodes that hasn't been released yet, or may have already been released by the time this one is. They had a booking in between a midterm rental stay. And it was so like everything was green light except 3 days in between. Well, they were just open and honest and said, hey, here's the deal. There's a booking, but we can have you, you could go on a trip that weekend or, go somewhere fun and we'll make sure and clean it when you move back in. If you're okay with that, we can move forward with this booking. And that's exactly what happened. And it turned out where the short-term rental stay didn't even come through. Maybe they canceled before it was time. I'm like, there's so many ways to navigate between midterm and short term, which I really like.
Yeah, I love it as well. And it's having a strategy, right? And what I love about this podcast is you're not leaving us out in the dark. These conversations are so important to have. You don't have to go at this alone and be in a silo. Katie and Kelly has seen it all. So tune in and listen to these episodes because these are things that we have to navigate all the time. And double bookings, making sure that we don't get double bookings. That's one of the worst things you can do in your business is have a guest at the property and another guest knocking on the door trying to enter the property. That would be like a total nightmare. So how do we
Oh my
prevent
gosh,
that,
yes.
right? We want to have those conversations, have a strategy in mind beforehand to make sure that doesn't happen. So I'm with you 100%. Rarely do we have Instabook. I'll test it every now and then, but rarely do we use Instabook for our midterm, short-term rental hybrid properties. We leverage a multiple duplicate listing calendar strategy, which I know is also very controversial, but it works for us. We're allowed to see what types of leads are coming in through Furnished Finder and through other platforms to continue that conversation. And it gives you an insight on what's in demand for your market. All of a sudden in your market, there are pilots that are training. You're like, what? Pilots who are training? What is this about? And so had you not had a listing put out there to have those conversations, you would not recognize that these are leads. And where there's one, there are going to be more pilots coming in and starting to understand, well, what's their cadence? What is their training schedule? Oh, they train for 8 weeks. They train for 16 weeks. Just becoming that expert for your specific market is the key. It's going to be difficult for us to speak to your market. I know my market, but it's your job to know what your market is. Are you attracting those that are coming for academic housing, climate migrants, flight schools, interns who are looking for housing, higher education? There are so many different midterm rental avatars out there. So be sure to capitalize on
Yeah.
2 or 3. Become the expert for those 2 or 3 avatars that you know your property can serve.
Hey landlords, are you ready to level up your rental game and simplify your midterm rental business? Well, get ready to meet your new best friend, KeyCheck. KeyCheck is your all-in-one solution for stress-free property management. With tenant-paid screenings, online rent payment processing, custom lease creation, and a suite of incredible landlord tools, you'll wonder how you ever lived without it. No more chasing down checks or sifting through piles of applications. KeyCheck helps you organize and manage all things landlording in a simple and efficient way. Make landlord life a breeze with KeyCheck, the game changer for modern property owners. Visit keycheck.com to unlock the power of stress-free property management and take your rental business to new heights.
There's a couple things that I want to highlight that you touched on. First of all, you're right. It's you want to have your properties on all the sites, right? And Furnished Finder is $149 to have your property on there per year. When you get a booking, we take $0.
Yeah, it's
So
no
it's like
brainer.
it's a no-brainer. It's like the lowest entry fee ever into one of these sites, especially because like there's no commission, there's no one taking the cream off the top, right? Like you literally like you just paid a list and it's like the gates are wide open, right? And the other thing that you said is that you really do get to know your market with the different leads. And I wanted to just share an example of that. Kelly knows this. We just got our first 3-bedroom. Like we kind of have been building, smaller and then we're getting bigger and bigger, bigger properties.
Woo!
And I was like, man, I'm like, and luckily we bought this 3-bedroom and the numbers worked out as a little bit of a flip. They worked out as a long-term rental or a midterm. So I was like,
Nice.
we got plenty of options here. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's try it as a midterm. But I hadn't seen a lot of leads come in for a 3-bed,
Yeah.
but I knew that was because my properties weren't that large, right? I got it listed, put everything up. I mean, it booked right away. And now I can talk with these types of tenants and you get to know those. But with midterm, it's like you got to jump in the pool and then you learn how to swim, right? And you learn your market like by being in it. So sometimes you got to. But like you said, it's like midterm is also this zone where we really are all here to support each other. Like, I mean, the 3 of us are women. Like, we've got a lot of women on our teams. When you need 4 bookings a year, it's not hard to like I'm not going to gatekeep, right? That's not what I'm here for. And I know Rachel's the same. When I saw you at Bigger Pockets, it was like, "Hey girl, like come sit by me. Let's chat," because it's really truly like when we do this all better, we all see the benefits. So I just think that's so cool.
Katie, I like what you just said, and I want to chime in where you said in the beginning, you got to jump in, right? One of the biggest questions I get asked is, well, how long exactly down to the second will it take for my very first one?
Right.
Just shoot your
Wow.
shot, right? Shoot your shot.
Yeah.
Do you get that question sometimes? How long exactly is it
Yes.
going to take?
I do. And a lot of times it's like it's been on for a day. What do I do? And it's like chill,
Right,
relax. And this is
right.
probably something we don't talk about enough is
Yeah.
the lead time of midterm travelers. It's you would think, okay, a long-term traveler, like I'm looking for my next year-long rental in Denver, I'm probably thinking 3 to 4 months out. Vacation, I'm probably thinking a few months out as well. Midterm, they're probably thinking a couple months out, and is not true. Like the average lead time for a midterm tenant is more times than not less than 30 days, quite frequently less than 14 days. I have had tenant after tenant who are like, "So can I move in tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Yeah." But you have to be
Yeah.
patient. You have to.
You're absolutely right. And going back to knowing your avatar. So say you are in that market that there's that seasonality and it could be the season of the flight schools, right? Understanding your specific market. But with avatars such as those who are displaced homeowners who have encountered a catastrophe, those are very unpredictable. But once they happen, and they're looking for a property within the next few days.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, let's transition a bit to talking a little bit more about Furnish Finder.
Yeah.
And Rachel, we're all aware Furnish Finder is a huge part of the midterm rental space. It's the home of midterm rentals, is the tagline we like to use. What advice do you have for others about the value of Furnish Finder and how to use it properly for luxury rentals?
Yeah, so full transparency, I hopped back onto Furnish Finder when I saw that your pricing range had increased because quite a few of our properties initially didn't meet the vast majority of the pricing ranges. So, for example, we were getting inquiries for a 5-bedroom home with potential guests looking for a budget of maybe $1,600 a month, which would work great for a studio or one bedroom in my particular market. And so when I saw that the range had increased to up to $10,000, where the those who are inquiring can actually uh, request that type of stay, I was like, okay, this is perfect. And our property assets, they're able to fit into those ranges. So super excited about that, super pumped about that. But some of
Good
my
point.
tips would be to just explore inside of the platform whether or not you are matched 100% with a lead or not. If you're matched with the lead, perfect. But if you're not matched with the lead, you have visibility into who in your market is inquiring, and you can reach out to those individuals. So, say it's a recruiter reaching out and looking for a particular property. Say they're looking for a two-bedroom for what we call locum tenens. Locum tenens are physicians, doctors that are traveling to an area. They're like substitute physicians. They're covering for, say, someone who's on maternity leave, and they're essentially a part of the traveling medical professional crowd. Well, you can reach out to them and see if there's a way that you can make it work with your particular property. If they're traveling with a family, it may end up being a great fit for them, or that can be a conversation that leads to future conversations. So the more conversations you can have inside of the Furnished Finder platform, I think is the secret sauce. That is the ticket to continuing to getting those bookings, because you're building relationships right there inside of the platform.
Yep, it's huge. It's huge. It's all about those connections, right? That's all what it's about. And if you have a Furnished Finder profile or account or listing and you're not like in there, you're not going to reap the rewards. Like to me, it's like the dating site for tenants and landlords for me. And it's such a terrible analogy, but I'm like, you're not going to like sign up for a dating site and like sit back and wait for one day your wedding ring to appear. Like you got to get on there and like try to find a good match. So I think that's true. And these larger properties, there are less tenants, but there's also less houses. And that change for midterm rentals, we've seen evolve so much. And now these traveling nurses and medical professionals are less than 50% of the travelers. Now, there's still a big chunk, but there's a huge chunk that's not them, right? So people are traveling, especially post COVID, for so many reasons.
Hmm. For sure. So, Rachel, you've got some really cool analogies. You say there's a couple mistakes that a lot of people make in the midterm rental space. And one of those mistakes, and there's two, so we'll talk about both of them. One of those mistakes is people put way too much emphasis on where to book like where to list your properties. Of course, Furnish Finder is the home of midterm rentals. You need to be there. You said the right question is instead, how do you make sure the property is set up properly to attract midterm rental guests? So, since you have experience with short term and midterm, what's the difference? How do you make it stand out on Furnish Finder as a midterm rental in the luxury space?
Yes. So, Kelly, one of the main questions I get asked is, where exactly should I be listing my property to get the bookings? Or who do I need to connect with to get these fantastic midterm rental bookings? Like, there's always a trick, or a special connection that needs to be made. And that's not necessarily true. It truly is all in your positioning of your property. It's how you're setting up the property and how you're speaking directly with that prospective guest to let them know, you know what, girl, I see you. I understand you. I understand the pains, your pain points. I understand your struggle. And this property is going to meet your needs. And a few ways that we do that, of course, is in setting up the property with the guest in mind. So, for instance, I was looking this morning at a particular client's property. He says, okay, he's now ready to launch it as a midterm rental. He's hosting up to a family of 6 people in his 3-bedroom home. And I'm like, great. But this table that's shoved over to the corner has 4 seats in it. And if you're listening, my dear friend, I love you to pieces, but this is for the people. I got to give them the tea to
Yes.
make sure they do not make the same mistake. And so I asked, was there another place to set for dinner? Like, how are we going to navigate this? And they're like, oh, no, maybe we can just cut it down to host 4 people. And I said, absolutely not. We're going to host 6 people. Let's get this
Yes.
table. Yeah, it's 3 bedrooms. Let's get this table switched out. And not only that, let's go ahead and add to the photos a beautiful table with the place set up with all the dishes laid out, the flatware, the dishes, just so that that future guest can envision themselves at your property. And I kid you not, once they see that, it doesn't matter if they're working with an insurance adjuster or a recruiter for their company, they're going to see that listing and they're going to say, you know what? This is the listing that I need to be at because you're speaking to them directly. They're going to grab that link and send it to whoever is booking the property on their behalf. So a few things like that, just making sure that you're designing the property with your guest in mind. We talked a little bit about blackout curtains a little bit earlier. The kitchen, if they're going to be staying there as a midterm rental, the kitchen is oh so very important. We're getting back into a healthier mindset, I think, as a society. So cooking from home is both more healthy and it's more economical, right? And making sure that your kitchen has everything that they need to cook, say, a full pasta meal. That's how I try to imagine it. So my colander, the strainer, the pots, the saucepan, so go through that Rolodex and make sure it's all there. And not only that, stage it really beautifully, say around the stove, open up the cabinets, and just take really beautiful pictures of all of the cooking ware, the small kitchen appliances, their selection of coffee makers, whether it's pods or drip or French press. I'm a coffee snob, so I need all the things.
Me too.
Right? So, and it's going to speak to them. And I kid you not a lot of people in your market most likely is doing all the things. So that speaks to them.
And make sure that you're bragging about yourself, right? Put all of those things in your listing. Make sure you're taking pictures of all of those things.
Yes, professional pictures, bright and beautiful professional pictures. And I like to say, show, don't just tell, right? Show, don't just tell. You want to show them photos, pictures. It said in the world of hosting, a picture isn't just worth 1,000 words, it's worth thousands of dollars. So you want your property to get selected. And for me, the secret sauce is with these midterm rental guests, oftentimes having pet friendly accommodations is a deal maker, is an absolute deal maker. So
For
that's
sure.
how you get seen.
I really like the tip that you gave about because I've seen the same thing. It's like, are you setting your space up for the number of bedrooms that you have? If your table only seats 2 and you have a 3 bedroom, it's not going to add up for a lot of people of hello, this isn't making sense here. And the same idea with a bedroom. If you've got a giant bedroom and you've got one little twin bed, that's a lot of wasted space and luxury that you could be leaning into. We have one episode that's called King Beds Only. It's a guy in
Ooh.
Houston, Texas that, and I would say he's in the luxury market too.
Yes.
He has those
Luxury
wow
king
factors.
beds is the default luxury travel bed, so
Yes, and so what he said is, "I've never found a room that hasn't fit a king bed yet." So that's his motto. Every room has a king bed. I'm like, "That's brilliant."
I love it. I love it. And just going back to that, I think it's a small thing, but it's a big thing. For Thanksgiving, one of my clients, she's a doctor out of the Southeast market, and she said that she had a table that fit 6 people, but the house, she could host 12, and she had it listed for 12 guests. And the caretaker, we know the demographic of the person who is booking the property is vastly women. She messaged her in the app and said, "So are we supposed to eat in tranches of 6 at a time?" Like threw her under the bus like that. I was like, "Oh, it was a
Mhm,
burn." But
girl.
she said her feelings got hurt really bad. And then she's like, Rachel is right. And she went ahead and sent me out the table.
You know what though? Like it's clear when you're a traveler and you see that someone's doing the bare minimum or trying to skimp on furnishings or just like, well, technically if you put 4 people on the floor, this could fit 6 people. Like it's clear, right? No, you're not fooling everybody. Just make it amazing from the start.
Okay, so that second common mistake that is when a request comes in on Furnished Finder or wherever you have your properties, and it's from an insurance company, one of your main clientele is insurance stays, and you say they're not ready. That's a common mistake of, all right, we want to book your place, but you're not ready of how the insurance process works. So, what are some tips that you have for Furnished Finder hosts to be ready for insurance bookings?
Okay, so number one is calendar maintenance first and foremost, and we've spoken about that a little bit earlier. So one thing that Katie mentioned a little bit earlier is like holding out and being a little bit more patient for some of those premium guests. So if you're using other platforms and you have these 2 night stays peppered all over your calendar till the kingdom come, where you're not going to be able to host this midterm rental guest. And so setting up your calendar in a way where your minimum length of stay that you're expecting further out is 30 days or more. If within the next 10 days you can accept 1 or 2 of those 2 night stays, that's fine. But further out, you need to set up your calendars so that the further out bookings, you're requiring longer stays so you can avoid that peppering that I'm talking about that's going to burn your ability to host these precious, amazing, life-changing, life restorative 3, 4, 5 month bookings that are paid for by the insurance. So that's one thing. The second thing is not submitting a proposal as quickly as possible. So when the insurance company's representatives, they reach out to you, you need to immediately respond. Right? Timeliness is key. And then I kid you not, the fortunes are in the follow up. I get so many people that tell me, oh, they just ghosted me. I finally responded and then they just ghosted me. They didn't ghost you. You have to follow up, create a cadence that you're comfortable with to follow up, whether it's 2 days or a follow up date that was already predetermined. So if Susie says, hey, this family needs to move in tomorrow, well, technically, it sounds like an emergency. It sounds like the house is on fire, literally and figuratively speaking, but it usually takes a few days, anywhere from 3 to 10 days to get all the paperwork going to move in. So exercise your patience, do your breathing exercises because you're going to feel like they said tomorrow, it's tomorrow. It's not really tomorrow. It usually takes a few days. But at the
Mhm.
same time, you want to follow up. If Katie said that, well, the adjuster, I'm going to speak with them on Thursday to follow up. Then Thursday afternoon, I want you to make sure that you're following up as well. I say, hey, what did the adjuster say about the proposal? So the fortunes are in the follow up. Do not let an inquiry like this just go by the wayside, okay? Because once it comes in, get on there. So I'm not a big cold caller. I don't cold call. We just list our properties on the right platforms, on Furnished Finders, and directly with the insurance companies. However, when the inquiry comes in, I'm like a dog that's not going to let go of that bone because I know the impact and the change it can make for my life for that year. That one booking can take up half of the year and I can then go to Portugal to look for more real estate property and not worry about my property because it's fully booked. That's how impactful these bookings are.
That follow up is also really important, even for smaller bookings or a traveling medical professional with a studio apartment, right? They might be hearing from a lot of landlords that are getting their lead, or they might have reached out to a handful of landlords, but follow up and make sure you're messaging. And, you can be polite and tactful about it, but you can be in your Furnished Finder
Yeah.
dashboard, just be like, hey, wanted to follow up here. Like, did you find a place to stay? Do you think mine will work out? Do you have any questions? Like, how can I help you? It is about
Yeah.
service, right? We're all in this for hospitality. And you've got to learn that, like, we're all doing this to help people find comfortable places to stay. So I think when you keep that
Yeah.
as your bottom line, everything goes a little bit smoother.
I think you just touched on something really important, Katie, and it's that sometimes I think the fear with follow up is, oh, I don't want to bother them, but they want you to bother them. As a matter of fact, when we reach back out, it's like, oh, just wanted to check what the adjusters say. They're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Like they're frazzled and they're juggling so many things. And by you teeing it up, you're helping them. And so if you could think about it that way, you lead with that heart of service that you know what, I'm helping them to get this family into a home because at the end of the day, one of their core metrics is how do we get families out of, say, a hotel and into a home where they can stay for a temporary midterm rental. That is their goal. So the quicker they can get someone in a home, the better it is for them, and it's a win-win all around.
For sure. Well, I'm going to lean in a little bit to that hospitality side, which we talked about a few minutes ago, and how important it is, especially with these insurance stays. They are on the brink of like mental stress, right? Because they've just lost potentially everything or at least a decent amount of things. They've been displaced from their home. So lean into those opportunities to really make their stay extra special, even if it costs a little bit extra out of your pocket because you want to make them a nice welcome basket or maybe give them, a Walmart gift card or a grocery store gift card to get started. Like we had a 1 year insurance stay, and it happened to be Christmas was towards the beginning of it. So I had an extra Christmas tree and I had some extra Christmas decorations, and I just asked them, do y'all have any? Would you like to have some for this Christmas? And they were so excited about that. And so I was able to drop that off and kind of just make that a little extra special part of their holiday. And so the other piece is tenant leads. When they come in, you can watch for those opportunities to lean into whatever it is that they're highlighting. Oh, well, I really love working out, or I really like trails, or whatever it is, or I'm work from home. Well, don't wait for them to ask. You can say, we have an extra in our, in our backup inventory, we have an extra monitor, or we have, free weights or a stationary bike. Let us know if that's something that you want us to add, have the cleaners add during their stay. That doesn't always work out great if you're not a local investor, but for Dave and I, it's very easy for us to just to run on over and drop that off on the flip day, and they're very grateful for that. And I'm pulling from stuff that we've put in our home so far. So, do y'all want to add anything to that? I just have one last question after this. So, if you'd like to add anything, please do.
So yeah, one thing I would like to add is we have a few guests who've stayed with us who had mobility challenges, accessibility issues. And so some of those grab bars in the shower has been very helpful. I'm always thinking about the population of the elderly family member or those who have special needs children or those who have mobility constraints. So always looking at properties, looking around to see, okay, can I find a property with a master on the main or a bedroom on the main so that that individual has access to the entire property and the kitchen and laundry. And I think that's made a huge difference because I don't know that a lot of hosts are thinking like that.
They're
And
not.
right. So pet friendly and being able to serve those who have some mobility constraints has been two of the rarest findings in our market. And it continues to draw that visibility for us and keep us on the map because we have an aging population, guys. And so more and more we're seeing that our avatars looking for some of those special accommodations.
Great point to add, because if you really want to lean in more to how to make your properties accessible, we had such a gem of an episode right around Thanksgiving. It was number 67 and 68. And it's the founder of Becoming Rent Able, and she said less than 1% of furnished rentals are accessible, and we can help fill that gap. So go back and listen to some of those tips of how you can fill the gap. And yes, first floor, no stairs. Those are great ways to watch for those investment properties that can reach that market as well. Okay, my last question for our episode. And Rachel, we've so enjoyed you being here, and we're definitely going to have you share how people can connect with you and follow you on social media. But first, you in part one, you termed yourself as a mathlete, and I love that. And you prefer properties with your two-door strategy that generate six figures or more. So have you used how do you help find those properties, and what advice do you have for those looking at the Furnished Finder stats page with that mathlete brain of how to really gain a lot of insight from the Furnished Finder stats page?
Oh, I love that. So, what I found that's been great on the Furnish Finder stats page is the ability to identify the markets where there is the most demand for midterm rentals. So, we can find which markets have the most demand. We can also find on there which property types that are we're experiencing more growth. So, I was also excited that I saw four bedrooms. The growth rate for the four bedrooms had increased as well. And as far as looking at markets as a whole, when I'm comparing one market versus another, there's nothing like using my budget. And my budget is pretty strict. It started off at 300K was the top where I was willing to invest. It has grown since then. So for those of you who are thinking, okay, she was only buying million dollar properties, miss me with that. Those numbers do not pencil out. So I love a 300 to $500,000 property. I won't go above 700K for my investments, but I'm looking at the ratios, the price to rent ratio. So the way I'm able to determine that is the actual structural value. I can calculate the value of the actual structure and the amount I'm able to generate for a midterm rental that is an insurance property is around 25% of that structure's value. Say, for instance, I purchase a $500,000 home and the actual structure is valued at 400,000 because land, you got to subtract the land from that, and land is not depreciable. So the rebuild value of the structure is 400,000. Well, 25% of that is how much I am able to generate per year per claim for a midterm rental. And so that's $100,000. And that's it. That's how I'm able to find those properties that I can generate six figures on. And six figures wasn't arbitrary. It was right around where I was making in my W-2. And I was thinking to myself, okay, I just want one or two properties to replace my W-2. I'm not that person that needs 100 doors. Yes, it's impressive to hear people bragging about their 100 doors that are making $100 a door. But the math for me wasn't mathing. So I said, okay, how do I own and operate the fewest number of properties that generates the highest profitability? And that was the way that we arrived at that, is using that formula and this particular strategy.
Love it. Well, it's been so good to talk with you once again, Rachel. We always get so much good information and also great conversation. And you're just so great to talk to. And we love hanging out with you in
Oh,
person
thank you,
and
Katie.
over YouTube because, it's 21st century. So that's what we do these days. But
Yep.
can you please tell all of our listeners how to stay in touch with you? And if they want to, follow or connect or do all those digital things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a list called 75 Gems. If you go to 75gems.com, you'll get my top cities for short-term rental and my top cities for midterm rental on the second tab that I gathered from Furnish Finder data, which I'm super
Love
excited
it.
Ooh,
about. Yep, just go to 75gems.com, 75gems.com, and then that'll link you to all the places on social media as well.
Love it.
awesome. We really appreciate you being with us. Uh, Not only so much that we had just a part one, we had a part two as well. But we look forward to the next time we get to talk with you or see you in person. You're always such the ROE is apparent in your life. The
Aw.
return on energy, you're always so energetic and have such a great insight into the midterm rental space. And if you are loving the content, don't forget to follow Rachel, follow the Landlord Diaries, check out the resource tab on Furnished Finder, and stay tuned next week for another new episode of the Landlord Diaries. Have a great week, everyone. Bye.